On this week's episode of Amari Purple Talk, more Sign of the Times rumors and really nothing else, but I've got more, but not really. But let's start the show. Amari Purple Talk starts now. Welcome to episode 43 of Amari Purple Talk, a Prince podcast where I share my thoughts on the purple musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your imagination funk soloist. So let's dive right on in. And as I said earlier, I've got nothing. Not because I really have nothing. Actually, I had a whole entire show notes, everything. But I didn't prepare adequately because when I could, because I was checking out the Prince Virtual Symposium. It was going on all weekend. Had to work 2 of those days, so I didn't get to check out as much as I wanted. But I spent a lot of time checking out what I wanted to on Sunday. And because of that, I tried to sneak some yard work in between. And my backyard now has a mohawk because I didn't want to miss the symposium on pandemonium. So I'll have to finish that up hopefully tomorrow morning sometime, or within the next day or two anyway, to finish off the backyard. But anyway, so over the weekend, there was a Prince Virtual Symposium that commemorated the anniversaries of the Dirty Mind album as well as Graffiti Bridge. So the actual title was DM40 GB30 Prince Virtual Symposium. The DM40 commemorating the 40th anniversary of the Dirty Mind album, and GB30, of course, the Graffiti Bridge 30th anniversary of the album and subsequent film as well. So there were a lot of different panel discussions related to both Dirty Mind and Graffiti Bridge. Also in relation, it's also the 30th anniversary of the release of the Times album, Pandemonium. So I think that was the first thing I started seeing on social media. And so when I investigated a little further, I was like, cool, I'm in. So I went and signed up. It was free to attend. And now, like I said, I got to view what I could. And unfortunately, my essentially non-essential essential gig always got in the way. So, and of course, this was last minute too. So had I had more preparation or advanced notice, I would have been taken off because I didn't want to miss this at all. But like I said, I got to check out what I could. And like I said, got a chance all day Sunday. Like I said, had to do some yard work and everything in between. But like I said, I got to check out the State of the Purple Union panel, as well as the Pandemonium panel as well. But over the weekend, I got to check out a few things. What impressed me the most, and probably what was the most talked about in the beginnings of the symposium, C. Lee McInnes did a wonderful panel on the connection of the Dirty Mind album and the Black experience. I mean, that to sum it up. And I think there's an abbreviated version you can still check out online. Like I said, I kind of want to, when I get some extra time, hopefully a lot of this stuff is still up to where you can kind of play catch up. Maybe hopefully some of it will be on YouTube or something. But man, for those that got to check it out, you know what I'm talking about. I can't even sum it up in, I would take about several episodes for me to explain just how powerful and insightful this was. Because, we live in this age, this sort of post golden age of hip hop. I mean, now what's passing off for hip hop to me is just basically record industry co-opting hip hop culture and giving nothing of quality in return. That's my opinion of it. But, if you fast forward back to 1980, and really hip hop, as far as mainstream America, it was, barely even a year old as far as mainstream America. So, what we were getting in terms of, say, the Sugar Hill Gang, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Curtis Blow, it really didn't even begin to scratch the surface of what was happening in New York, 5 to 10 years prior to 1979-80. So what he pointed out was that basically Rick James and Prince were sort of the bad boys of the industry. Because if you really look at it, the Jacksons, Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, I mean, those were kind of like, that was your mainstream R&B. I mean, you had Parliament Funkadelic. To me, you can throw them into the mix also, because, I mean, that was just far out. But it was so conceptual, unlike, or no different than, say, what was coming up around that time with progressive rock, the concept albums and things of that nature. But if I can paint a picture of where I was living, it's all black neighborhood. I didn't go to like an integrated school until senior year of high school, actually. And the sounds that were being absorbed. I mean, here, definitely by the 80s, we had like 4 black radio stations. And kind of even like early 70s, I mean, you had KATZ, you had kind of KWK, which, if I remember, was kind of a mixture of things. It was pretty progressive for its time. It was kind of playing some, it really wasn't quite mainstream stuff. It was like heavy R&B stuff, some pretty heavy rock stuff. But that's kind of like very early. But definitely KATZ, WESL back in the day. Those were AM stations, all black music format. By the mid 70s, FM with KKSS, which became Magic 108 later, and then Magic something else I can't even remember anymore now. But, everything was coming through those channels. So when you got a Parliament Funkadelic, that's what, if, around that time, this is like adolescent, preteen era. So friends that I had that had like older brothers, they had the early Funkadelic albums. But the Parliament stuff, the Funkadelic Warner Brothers era was a little bit more mainstream, but that was the hip stuff you could get. Bootsy's Rubber Band, that was the hip stuff that you got. And then, Rick James was kind of like that close second. So that's what everybody was talking about. Yeah, Stevie Wonder records, great. Earth, Wind and Fire records are great. The Jackson 5 were always great. But, to be cool, to be hip, it was sort of gangster to listen to Parliament Funkadelic and Rick James. And then, here comes Prince. Now Prince in the beginning, with the first 2 albums, it was kind of in that mold. And if you read all the early critic reviews, it was kind of like priming him to be the next Stevie Wonder. There were comparisons to, at least vocally, to Michael Jackson and the Bee Gees and stuff like that. So, or even Smokey Robinson. But with Dirty Mind, for me as a 15-year-old, like I said, I and I've said this a million times before, where, I had heard Soft and Wet in the beginning, but every time I heard it on the radio, it was one of those things that was in that sort of commercial free block of songs. So by the time I would come in, I never heard who it was, and I enjoyed that. And my uncle tried to put me on to the second album, and I just really wasn't feeling it, because even then, like Off the Wall was the gold standard. So it was like, where he was trying to sell me on, yeah, he better than Michael Jackson. He plays all the instruments, and it's like, yeah, whatever. But Dirty Mind, when that was brought to me, that was a friend of mine, because I had a pretty cool component set that I just got for like I can't remember, Christmas or birthday or something. And friend down the street, he would borrow albums from other people and then bring them to my house because it had the cassette deck, and he would just dub cassettes and then take the albums back to whoever he borrowed them from, and he was cool. And he accidentally left the cassette that he made, so I kind of had some time to really kick back and just really absorb that album. And once it clicked, as at that point I had been a pretty good student of, I would say, rock history. So by that time, I kind of knew the impact of 50s rock and roll on not only just American minds, the young American minds, but also young British minds, meaning that if not for Little Richard or Chuck Berry, Elvis or whoever, that there'd be no Beatles or Rolling Stones and those groups to follow. So I always looked at that particular period, music-wise, because, there was still a lot going on historically that it's like, no, you really don't want to return to those days. At least, throw out the racism part and, just keep the music. But just that sort of where music captured the mind of the youth and kind of created this whole other thing, this movement, this event. Disco was really wearing thin, and hip hop was that other thing, that other revolution that was going on. So you had kind of hip hop, and then you had Prince. And I mean, you could throw Michael Jackson in the mix because he was kicking some doors down. But on just a musical impact, you had hip hop doing its thing as a reaction to disco and the extravagance of, say, Led Zeppelin and these big stadium tours and $1 million sponsorships and stuff like that. Then here you also have Prince, who's kind of doing it on this David Bowie style level. And for me, those things were just the things that I needed. Just as a 15, as an artist, as, getting into wanting to play music and stuff like that. That was the thing, that's what I needed. Just like whoever became musicians in the 60s based off of Chuck Berry or Little Richard or, Buddy Holly or whoever. Those were the things. And the kind of social, political ramifications, things like being, becoming one of the first black artists on MTV and things like that. C. Lee McInnes's presentation was just amazing. That's just me just kind of summing up what he said. I mean, he said it definitely better than I can say it now, but that's it in a nutshell for me. And I was just blown away from that. And I'm like, oh, man, if, and this was just day one of the symposium. So imagine what we would get later. So the other thing I got to check out was, kind of came in the middle of it, was the panel discussion with Jill Jones and Andre Simone and discussing kind of like the Dirty Mind era, what it was like kind of being there at the time, and possibly what was on Prince's mind on certain things. And I enjoyed that a lot too. And I'm glad they were sort of kind of, in as far as that level, kind of the lead off as far as getting the celebrities into it, because it really paints a picture of Prince as a human being and doesn't focus on the myth. So a lot of times, and especially with Prince's passing, controlling the narrative, we'll never get the complete picture of who he really was. We'll, over time, maybe as more documentaries, more books come out, we'll get a pretty good chunk of what he was like. But there's a tendency to gloss over things or make the myth bigger than the reality. And, to be an artist of that magnitude, you're going to have some complexities. And it's not just going to be one thing. You're not going to be the nicest guy all the time. And there's sometimes, and especially something like either the music industry or entertainment industry as a whole, the big takeaway is you can't be no punk in this business. It's just no way. I would say, even somebody like a Tom Hanks would probably have to kind of get real with you on a certain level, because it's just there's no moral compass in that business. That's why there's so many tragedies. This in itself, the way Prince, it's a tragedy in itself, because there's no moral compass. There's no real, there's not that many real people, or the real people kind of get shut out over time in favor of the hangers on, the freeloaders, the people that separate you, whether they do it with drugs or, if you're in a group, they do it with drugs or a solo career, whatever is going on. Or, you were great on that TV show, now let's get you into movies, but never mind what you want to do half the time. Or there's not enough people to tell you no when you need to be told no. And it's great to kind of get that perspective, of, okay, it just wasn't about Purple Rain. It wasn't just about the hit records. It wasn't about, half the time, it really wasn't about anything that we're getting out of it. It's just that this was a real person that was doing his art. And sometimes that, there were great times, there were fun times, and then there were some not so great times. So it was good to get that sort of real time perspective on that. So I enjoyed that panel quite a bit. Like I said, I kind of was just kind of waiting around to like what I knew I was going to have more time today. Well, which is Sunday. I record the show on Sunday. But, the previous night with the actual discussion of Graffiti Bridge with, again, Jill Jones, Jerome Benton was the surprise guest there. There was Michael Dean, and yes, I think Big Sexy was there too. So, that was a great panel discussion, because for me, I was disappointed with the film Graffiti Bridge. My relationship with that film and album was, there were rumblings that it was coming. There were rumblings it was a sequel to Purple Rain. But, unlike now, where we have all these YouTube shows and pundits and Access Hollywood and Entertainment Tonight. Well, Entertainment Tonight had always been around, but we got so many shows now that, they're, the minute something's announced or whenever production begins, there's people on set, interviewing, and first looks and teaser trailers and big events, tune in at 12 o'clock. We're going to show you the teaser trailer on YouTube or whatever. But back then you didn't have all of that. So it was like, basically it was, oh, Prince is doing another film. Well, hope it's better than Under the Cherry Moon. Oh, it's a sequel to Purple Rain. We're in. Oh, the time's back together. So there were all these rumblings. And there were also word of delay too, because originally it was supposed to have been released in the summer. But it kept getting pushed back, and then finally it was released in November. But the soundtrack came out like in August. So I remember picking up an issue of Rolling Stone that had a review of the album, I think within a week of the actual album's release. And this was, I can't remember if I don't think it got 5 stars. I think it got like 4.5, which was pretty impressive, because it's like, I don't even think Sign of the Times got 4.5 stars for a review. But, just reading the review, to me, my first mind was that this is going to be, if not as big as Sign of the Times, maybe even better. And I remember Street Side Records, it was going on sale at midnight, and I think that was on a Monday, and going to pick that up. And just having to hear the album without never having to see the movie first was the big, the big impact on me at that time. It was like, yeah, and especially the first 4 songs, just like the review. It was like the first 4 songs, to me, kind of had that strong flow like the first 4 songs from Sign of the Times. Not to say it was better, but it was close. It was probably close. And, just kind of that first, because I had the cassette. I got the CD a little bit later, like maybe a month or 2 later, I got the CD. But the cassette, just the first side of that cassette, which ends with Joy and Repetition, it was pretty strong. I enjoyed it. And it was pretty strong. And then the second side, I enjoyed it. Maybe not as much as the first side, but, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. And it was like, yeah, this is a good album. And I remember always playing it all the way through anyway, because there weren't, maybe except for Tick Tick Bang, that's probably the one song that I really just don't like on that album. However, there is an earlier version, and I think it was recorded in 82 or something, that is way better, much better than the Graffiti Bridge version. And if you can find that, definitely check that out. I hope it gets an official release one day, but that original version works much better than the Graffiti Bridge version. But I still played it all the way through, even with the CD, I didn't skip it. But it took the movie to really kind of warp my opinion of the album. And I was really disappointed with the film. But like I said, hearing the sort of behind the scenes and what was going on and what Prince's mindset was, how it started off as one thing and became another thing. So based on that, I feel like that Graffiti Bridge as a film, to me, I just think it would work better on a smaller screen. And if you don't think of it, and I think this was pointed out in that panel discussion as well, if you look at it kind of like if you look at the long form of Rhythm Nation video, or any long form Michael Jackson video, I think it's kind of on that level, to where with the Rhythm Nation, with Janet, or any of my, you're not looking for Citizen Kane in any of that. The excellence is in the fact that you have this music video that's in a long form, and did it execute the promotion of that song? And yeah, in those cases it did. Using an example, to me, the Symbol album was another Prince album that it was an album I really struggled with, because it was one that I really wanted to like. And, my anticipation level was very high up until the release. There was, Sexy MF was out as a single, and it was kind of like, sometimes, it's like, okay, it's Prince, he's not going to pick the obvious choice for the single, not 100% of the time. He's going to go with, hey, I think this will be the one. Or if there are obvious choices, he's not going to pick that obvious choice. It's going to go with, I'm going to go with this as the first single. And then you kind of go like, okay. So it took me a while to really warm up to that song. I mean, maybe after I got the CD. No, I take that back. After I got the video, then I warmed up to the song better. Then, My Name is Prince, which, I don't know, I enjoy it a little bit better now. But long story short, that Symbol album is the one that I really, really struggled with. There were songs that I did like on it. There's a bunch of songs I don't like. But, again, what warped my enjoyment, or in this case, it kind of went the other way, where the Graffiti Bridge film kind of wrecked my feeling towards the album. The 3 Chains of Gold video changed my view of the Symbol album, to where seeing it in that medium, and especially some of the songs that I struggled with, it elevated it to where like, oh, okay, I get it now. So it took that visual imagery to go with that song to say, oh, okay, now I get it. And so when I go back to listen to the album, then there's different nuances, whether it's in the production, whether it's in the musicianship, song arrangement, or because of the video, it's like, oh, okay, I'm hearing lyrics a lot clearer than when I did just listening to it. Because if I'm just listening, maybe I'm distracted by something else. Maybe I'm reading while listening, or just kind of chilling out while listening, and just kind of thinking of other stuff, and just having some background music. But it's like, oh, okay, that lyric, that's pretty. Let me listen a little bit more now. So with that, the 3 Chains of Gold video, I think as a concept, and again, it's not, an Oscar-worthy production or Emmy-winning production, but it was executed well enough. Again, when it comes to music videos, does it sell the song? Does it help? You got the listening experience, but does the visual help you with that listening experience? And in that case, to me, it worked better conceptually, and maybe even, can't say plot-wise, but maybe executing the narrative and the world building worked better with 3 Chains of Gold than it did with Graffiti Bridge. But that being said, if Graffiti Bridge was released on that same format, if it was just a VHS home release to sell the album, I haven't had a chance to watch the film again in a while, but I'm going to go on a limb and say that if I watch it this time around and just think of it as just a long form music video, I think I'll have a better, because I've watched it, and I think sometimes I've watched it just to go like, okay, there's something in here I want to like. And I don't know, I haven't watched it in a very long time, but my thing was just the excitement of seeing the original Time back together. So that was the selling point for me. I'll tell you that even though I enjoyed the album prior to the movie, Elephants and Flowers was kind of at first one of the weaker songs to me, but the performance in the film changed my perspective. And now, especially like the first set of lyrics, yeah, the chorus to me, the hook and the title, Elephants in Play, it's a bit much, but to me, that first verse sells it. And then sort of the bit, the love, the one who is love, the one that gives us the power, the one who makes everything, elephants and flowers, blah, 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 there'll be peace for those. That part and the first verse are my favorite bits of that song, because that's the message. That's the whole point right there in those two things. It's that sort of emptiness and loneliness, and then you're seeking salvation or spiritual awakening or something, and you focus on the spiritual, the one that made everything possible. And it worked, and then I enjoyed it a lot better. I've always thought, for some weird reason, and it's probably the 90s, so who knows, but I always felt like, I always heard in my voice that David Bowie should do a cover of that. I just think his voice would have lent itself well to that arrangement. So I don't know if, in a way, he was thinking of it or whatever. I don't know what the origin of the writing of that song was, but for me, in my weirdness, that's what I always wish David Bowie would have done a cover of that. But anyway, so definitely that panel, like I said, just little anecdotes that's inspired me to kind of reevaluate the film. And as I was listening to the CD, as I was preparing for the show, it was like, yeah, I kind of got some of that feeling back from, because now I guess it's nostalgia time. It's like, okay, it's the 30th anniversary, and it's like, man, yeah, and where I was in 1990. If I ever decide to write a book, definitely that summer, actually that year of 1990 has to have its own chapter or two chapters or whatever, because that was a pretty heavy it was like that year to me was like the Merovingian changing something in the Matrix. That year itself, it started off, still living in California and still going to art school, and I had it pretty much down pat then. It was like I was kind of at a level to where I was okay. I was doing pretty good. And then I just ran that 1990 started off, and that beginning semester, it was like that January, February, it was like nothing I did worked. Every single class, it was just weird. And, it's art school, folks, so don't think it was anything academic, but, it was like every class, something went, it just, for some weird reason, it just didn't click. It wasn't that I wasn't work. It was just that it just didn't click. Like everything I turned in, it started, it was panned. It was like, oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's, it was just, nothing was working. And then I kind of took like a week, because it was a thing to where like you could miss, you had only 2 classes you could miss. And then if you missed any more than that, then I guess you were out or something. But, I kind of milked it for its limit and just kind of reflected. And it was getting closer to the time of my birthday, which is in March. So right around that time, I just kind of just took off and was like, let me try to figure this out. It's like, do I go back in and fight? Do I give up? That type of thing. And I remember getting... just kind of treating myself to Sly and the Family Stone's greatest hits, and just tripping off of that album was, the motivation I needed to go in. I don't care what they think. I'm just going to go in and bam, I'm just going to be me and this is what I'm going to turn in. And it turned around, actually. It turned around, because that's the thing. As an artist, it's about being true to yourself. Don't let them second guess you into like, oh, well, would they like this or would they like that? And, so by the time summer hit, coming home for vacation, and like I said, just a lot of stuff that was going on. Some pretty cool adventures. And like I said, some things where the Merovingian changed the matrix. Like I said, if I write a book, then you'll get the gory details. But but by that August, actually beginning of the summer, because Jerk Out was out, and then a little while later there was that. So prior to that, my three big go-to albums were Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet, Tony's Revival, and Digital Underground's Sex Package. Those are my three go-to albums that year of 1990. And then Pandemonium comes out, and that kind of like added a fourth to the mix. So that summer, for me, just revolved around those four albums in just heavy rotation. And then kind of as a fifth, Ice Cube's America's Most Wanted. And then bam, by that August, then there was Graffiti Bridge. So, that was a pretty good year for music. And then I think, what was that, Guys the Future album too? So, I mean, it was just a really heavy music time. That was some pretty great track. And Pebbles Giving You the Benefit. More so that single, although I enjoyed that album, but that single for me was phenomenal. That's one of my just favorite records, period. Favorite songs, period. But yeah, just having Pandemonium dominate that summer, having the summer cap off with the Graffiti Bridge soundtrack, that carried me back into what ended up being my final year living in California and stuff. I mean, just having to go in with that, it was kind of, like a more positive period going into the end of the year a little bit. Like I said, some looking back, those sort of weird changes were taking effect, and so definitely. So listening to it now, after, I don't know, I've listened to it off and on over the years, but just listening to it now off the buzz of the Symposium was just amazing. So, wow, I've gone on about the Symposium and everything, and that's why I just kind of decided to just jettison the show notes for this week and just focus on that. So, actually, like I said, my huge props to everyone that put that together. Again, big props to C. Lee McInnes, who's the presenter and moderator, D'Angela Duff, who was the Symposium creator and one of the co-producers of it, all the sponsors. What is this? This is hopin.to, the website that facilitated all of this. Big thank you. It was definitely something I needed as well, because I mean, this week, the last few weeks, it's just heavy all around, and a lot of us are feeling it. There's a lot going on. We're trying to change the world on the one hand, and then you're still dealing with a pandemic on the other hand. And then there's groups of people running around, pissed off at people trying to change the world and not believing a pandemic even exists. And, basically bottom line, on the pandemic end of things, nobody has any answers. And the people we're looking to for the answers, they're not giving anybody much to go on. And the people that just don't believe in anything, they're running amok too. So something like this was a pretty good distraction. This is the best I felt in a long time. I used to go to the Minneapolis Music Expos back in the 90s. I went 92, 93, and 94. And this symposium kind of gave me that same feeling I used to get going to those. I always enjoyed those, and the panelists, whether it was Babyface one year, Jammin' Lewis another year. I met Full Force, the guys from Full Force at the one in 93. So this was, even though I got to be an observer on this one, even that was enough just to kind of kick back and, hear some of the thoughts that are similar to mine. I also got to learn from a lot of the panels, especially the State of the Union. Those are a lot of people I looked up to, putting my show together. So, man, so big thank you to everyone. The Pandemonium one, I'll get more into the time. That'll be next episode, because I had something planned in regards for discussing the time, as well as the revolution also, but we'll bump that to next week. But yes, thank you. Also, speaking of the Pandemonium one, the Muse to the Pharaoh, for moderating that panel. Big thanks for that one. The Time is my favorite group, so thank you. And I love the Pandemonium album. What time is it for me? See, if I was on that panel and asked that question, definitely, it'd be what time is it? Pandemonium and the First Time album would be a tie, because you got Cool and you got The Stick on that first album. So, just those two songs alone weighed against the whole Pandemonium album. Enough said. So anyway, so what we're going to do now, we're going to move on to our one and only main topic. And that topic is the rumored Sign of the Times track listing that has leaked. The site housequake.com, which is a brilliant site. Actually, I don't know. No, they don't have the website anymore because Prince made them take it down. So I used to be a member on that. My call sign was, I won't even tell you my call sign, but long story short, I'm a huge Miami Vice fan, so that's a clue. So anyway, but they kind of compiled the track listing, and what I enjoyed about their compiling of that listing, I guess there's some space for some tracks that have yet to be decided. And that gives me hope, because earlier leaks of this list had some very huge omissions. Now, with the Sign of the Times Deluxe, the big controversy were the omissions of Lust You Always and Extra Lovable. And while I too am disappointed those two tracks are not there, I understand why they're not there. But I mean, I don't know. We kind of live in this age where we're all hypersensitive to everything right now, and it's not so much as us that's hypersensitive. It's certain people that are so hypersensitive that they're doing more harm than good, and that's, really a reflection to all these Karens out there that's, and barbecue Beckys that are causing all this trouble, and stuff like that. So it's a thing to where, and, while Prince's thing is pretty solid, there's people waiting to just, they just can't see, they just can't be happy. It's like they're so filled with such hate and venom, that they just can't turn, whatever it is that got them to that point, to where they got to start tearing people down. they're not looking into themselves. Because my big philosophy is you're not going to make any money tearing something down. That's just the bottom line. There's people that's so filled with hate and anger that it's like you wasted so much time being hateful and angry that that's probably why the reason you still in the situation you in, or why you're in a position, and even if you have everything, you acting like you have nothing. So I get why those two songs are not on there, but who knows? I'm hopeful that when everything transfers over to Sony, that they'll do their own, it'll be a more expansive 1999 set where you're getting, what is it, 8 CDs or something, and a couple of tours. Or you'll get a box set that's a complete tour set from the Triple Threat Tour. Who knows? But maybe I have a feeling those songs will eventually resurface in a more expanded set, or an actual box set, more than, I guess, what they're calling a super deluxe edition. Where you'll get an actual box set and it's 8 CDs or 10 CDs. And, with Sign of the Times, there was so much material that even with this super deluxe, you're pretty much getting that right off the bat almost. But what this particular track list leaked was, you've got, of course, the 2 CDs that will be the remastered album, which is what my mind will be blown, because I started off with the cassette. And I mean, what I learned from the Symposium today was that a lot of those were mixed from the CDs were mixed from the mixes used for the cassette, and not the master tapes of the vinyl, if I'm interpreting that correctly. And as much as I know about things, this was a learning experience for me. So thank you guys out there for pointing that out. So, like I said, so it's the remastered album, which will be 2 CDs long. And then, of course, you'll have your CD with the remixes and the B-sides. To me, I mean, there's really only 2, La La La, He, and Shockadelica. Of course, that's worth the price of admission right there, just having those 2, especially the longer versions of those. The Housequake 7 More Minutes, or 7 Minutes More Quake, that was something I always enjoyed. I kind of maybe wanted a different B-side, or another B-side, original B-side altogether. But the 7 Minutes Mo Quake was an enjoyable listen for me too. So it'll be cool to have all that on one CD. Plus the single mixes, extended versions of Hot Thing. It's cool. And then we kind of get to the vault stuff, which definitely it looks heavy on the Dream Factory material. And like I said, I guess the rumors are that they're still finalizing this list, if it's true. Remember, there's been no official word from the estate and no official word from Warner Brothers. So I guess let's just take all of this with a grain of salt. So, yeah, so like I said, there's a longer version of Forever in My Life, which I've heard exists. So that'll be a great one to hear. Also, Soul Psychedelicide 2. That I have as a bootleg, and the quality isn't great. So from what I can tell, it's something that I enjoy, and it seems pretty funky enough. So I'm sure that once I get the official release version of it, that I'll like it even better. So yeah, like I said, it looks pretty heavy on Dream Factory era. There's All My Dreams, Let's see, Can I Play With You, which was originally intended for Miles Davis. Visions, Witness for the Prosecution, Power Fantastic is on it. Or maybe on it, apparently, allegedly on it. Let's see. And then there's The Ball, there's Train, In a Large Room with No Light. And let's see, looks like a couple of alternate versions of Strange Relationship and A Place in Heaven. So, like I said, they did leave some spaces on each of the Vault CDs, and to which I'm guessing we'll get some of the Camille material, Rebirth of the Flesh, Fill You Up, hopefully long version of that too. So those things, let's see, Rock Hard in the Funky Place, so hopefully we'll get those versions on there as well. And like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it looks like there's 10 songs that have yet to be decided on. Like I said, Rebirth of the Flesh, I'm hoping, or some of the Camille material, I'm hoping, ends up on this as well. You can't have a Sign of the Times Super Deluxe and not include that. Now, I've heard some things on social media regarding wanting a Camille album to themselves, and that would be cool. And one of the best ideas I heard was that they should put it out on Record Store Day, and that would be cool. Just put out just on vinyl. You wouldn't necessarily have to have it on CD. Just put it out on vinyl, and just leave the tracks as sort of the final, for CD. Just leave it on the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe. So that would be sort of my idea, my suggestion on the Camille tracks. And then there are of course, the live CDs. So there'll be 2 CDs from concert in Utrecht, and that's in the Netherlands. And that's 2 CDs, and then there's a DVD from Paisley Park, New Year's Eve, 1987, which will have the Miles Davis performance on it. So that's cool. That would, I would be cool with that. You can make an argument to say that you could put for those of you on volume set on there somewhere or something, cool. But actually, I would just be cool with just this. If they just left it at this, and then, like I said, just make sure that the Camille tracks are a part of this as well. But things like for those of you on volume, alternate versions from the Sign of the Times tour, things of that nature. You could do standalone releases on those at some point. That'll be something, Sony could cash in later. And, I'd be cool with that. But, I like this list. I hope that this is something that will come out. Like I said, they have tracks to decide on. So definitely, like I said, again, make sure that the Camille tracks are on it for sure. And this would be basically, this is something that I've always wanted to see. Sign of the Times is definitely my favorite Prince album. And, for those of you who remember me from MPG Music Club, I was one of those voices that was highly vocal on there needs to be a Sign of the Times Deluxe set. It must happen first. But hey, it's better late than never. And hey, threw a sign, or you threw a 1999 Super Deluxe at me, and I was like, cool, I'll take this too. So yeah, so I'm hoping this is something that's true, and I was hoping something would be announced this week. You had this big symposium. It, to me, celebrations, and I think it was Michael Dean that had the idea first, that the Prince celebrations at some point, if there's no telling when things will ever open up at this point, but whenever things open back, if it's not the first one out the box, or you got more time to plan, you got more time to consider it. So whoever's in charge of these type of things, and if there's listeners out there that have the ear of the people that are in charge of these type of things, then, I would like to see the celebrations treated more like a Comic-Con, like the San Diego Comic-Con, where it's become where it's not just about comic books anymore. There's where people promote their TV shows, oh, here's the new season of such and such. And sometimes not always superhero TV shows or science fiction shows. But, there's also, this is exclusive first movie trailer for the next Marvel movie, or the next DC movie, or the next superhero movie, or science fiction movie, or whatever. And, like I said, I think Michael Dean had the idea of doing the Prince celebrations in a similar fashion, but, just for the Prince musical singularity, where it's cool. You kind of have all the panelists, and you have different Purple alumni show up and do panel discussions, and that's cool. But, when it comes to, say, Super Deluxe edition or certain compilation, I know record industry isn't as strict as, would say, the movie industry when it comes to, okay, well, these release dates are planned out in advance, and it's just like, okay, let's insert this movie here. So Christmas, let's insert a Star Wars movie, and then summer, let's insert a Marvel movie or something. Record industry isn't that, I can't think of the word. They're not quite as efficient. There you go. Not quite as efficient. So things just kind of come out when they come out. But, I would like to see where, if at all possible, maybe a few big, if it's June, and then whatever, you've got September or Christmas coming up or whatever, then it's like, okay, well, here's an exclusive and whatever era. So say like it's say an artificial age Super Deluxe, that they'll come out with or something. Then, have Third Eye Girl come out and make the announcement. Say, September, this is coming out. Or, next record store day, look for this, and have that jump I don't know how record store day releases are planned either, but, say the Camille album, record store day, April 2022. And I think they do it twice a year. So if you have the Prince celebration in June, then you got something to build anticipation for the one, I think it's in November. And just say, well, the Camille album on vinyl only, and, get it record store day in November, and just build that anticipation. So just a thought. Like I said, I don't know who has the ear of the people to do that, but, I'd be excited for that. And then, here's the trailer for this documentary. It'll be on Netflix and whenever, and just build the excitement for it. All right, so that's that with the Sign of the Times Deluxe rumored track listing. What do you guys think? Are you excited about this too? Is Sign of the Times your favorite album? Leave me a comment and let me know. So Wow, I managed to fill up an hour. So, all right. I was thinking this was going to be a lot shorter, but definitely there was so much to cover on that symposium. Like I said, for those of you that got to experience it, I hope you had as much fun as I did checking it out. And for those that missed it, hopefully they'll put something to where you can check it out. And there's a bunch of stuff that I missed too that, hoping that there's a way I can check it out. But definitely, if so, check it out. Other than that, we'll have our regular Amari Purple Talk format next week, which will include the Purple Spotlight, Bite the Boots, and more. So thanks for tuning in this week. And you can tune in every Monday. And I was kind of thinking about doing this a day earlier on Sundays. I'm still kind of working that out. Also, to my What's in the Crate blog. Things have been so heavy these last couple of weeks that I really just hadn't had the time to really just sit down and play some vinyl and put my thoughts to computer and upload for a new blog. But What's in the Crate blogs will resume hopefully this week. But definitely check out the previous blog posts on those. I have the link in the show notes. So by all means, definitely check those out. Wide range of albums so far. There is Prince's Parade that I do have a blog post for. So all of you in the musical Prince Purple musical Singularity, definitely check that one out for sure. But check out the rest of them too. And check out my website, amaricommunications.com, and keep up on all the latest projects. And also pick up some Amari merchandise. We have Amari Purple Talk t-shirts, Amari Purple Talk coffee mugs, and there's all types of Amari themed merchandise as well. So definitely pick that up, help a brother out. And thanks once again for tuning in this week. I'm Richard Cole, your imagination funk soloist, always hard at work. You can find me on Twitter at RichardCole_now, and also on Instagram at RichardCole_Amari. And once again, thanks for tuning in. Definitely stay safe. Wear your masks out there. Just be careful. There's a lot going on still, and we still got some ways to go. But like the song says, hold on to your soul. We got a long way to go. So until then, next week, keep it purple and on the one.